When the German army attacked Belgium in May 1940, they rolled in with hundreds of Panzer Is, 2s, 3s and even a few Panzer IVs as well. These are all well-known tanks which fought in even more famous Panzer divisions. But this video is not about them. In this video we will take a closer look at the destiny of Belgium's medium tanks during the fighting of May 1940. The Belgian tank squadron had had an interesting history even before the start of the war. It commenced on the 13th of September 1935 when the Belgian government decided to modernize the army with the purchase of 25 new tanks. The government bought the French Renault AMC 35s, which were renamed to ACG-1. They were armed with a 47mm main gun and a 7.62 Hotchkiss machine gun. The crew counted 3 heads, the commander, the gunner and a driver. 18 tanks would be distributed to the 2 cavalry divisions. The remaining 7 would go to the Chasseurs Ardennais, which was regarded as one of the best units in the Belgian army. After considerable delay, the first tank, numbered 803, was delivered to the Belgian army. However, the tank proved to be heavier than the weight stated in the contract. The contract was subsequently terminated and Renault received a compensation. The government then turned its attention to the cheaper British Carden Loyd T-13 carriers, which were also much lighter. However, on the 21st of April 1938, a new contract with Renault was set up for a new purchase of 10 ACG-1s, including the already delivered 803. The 9 tanks were delivered in the course of April and May of the following year, just 1 year before the start of the invasion. As not to spark a provocation towards the Germans, the tanks were classified as armoured cars. On the 1st of September 1939, the opening day of the German invasion of Poland, the crews in Watermaal-Bosvoorde were sent to Ghent, where they would be officially introduced to the new tank unit. The unit was commanded by Kapitein Hullebroek and was a part of the T-13 tank battalion of the 2nd Cavalry Division. Training started in October 1939 with combat maneuvers. At the end of the year, the tank unit moved to Brussels, where it was divided in 2 platoons of 4 tanks, with an additional 2 in reserve. The first platoon was led by Lieutenant Henri Gailly in tank 807. The 3 tanks under him were the 817 under Wachtmeester Plissard, the 829 under Adjutant Poulains, and the 832 of Wachtmeester Franquinet. The second platoon was led by Onderleutnant William Schreiber in tank 814. Under him were Wachtmeester Verboven in the 803, Wachtmeester Dumortier in the 831, and Wachtmeester Dumoulin in the 833. The tanks in reserve were the 806 and the 823. They showed some flaws and were used for spare parts. When the Germans invaded Belgium on the 10th of May, the unit was relocated to Schaerbeek, where they performed patrols around Brussels to look out for possible Fallschirmjäger attacks. On the 16th of May, after 1 week of standing on full alert at Brussels, the unit moved off to Humbeek, to the front line where they were put under the 1st Lechte Regiment. The front line had reached the capital city and the tanks were finally called upon to play their part in the war. The tanks were to act as a mobile anti-tank unit and defended the bridges between Wellebroek and Vilvoorde. The ACG-1 squadron first saw action on the 17th of May in Capelle op den Bosch. Adjutant Poulains in the 829 and the 833 under Dumoulin were to prevent the Germans from crossing the bridge. They managed to eliminate a German pack gun on the other side of the canal until the 829 was hit in the turret by an anti-tank shell. Driver Camille was killed and Poulains and gunner Lutin were wounded. Poulains returned to his tank after his wounds were dressed and fended off German infantry until the situation became untenable. Dumoulin in the 833 remained in action until 9 o'clock when the retreat was called out. Poulains managed to escape the scene in a sidecar. The rest of the squadron acted as a rear guard to protect the retreating infantry heading towards Dendermonde. At dawn on the 18th of May, Kapitein Hullebroek of the staff and the 3 tanks under Onderleutnant Schreiber reached Dendermonde. Hullebroek decided to leave Dendermonde and head for Lotenhulle just west of Ghent, where he arrived at 4 p.m. Lieutenant Gailly in the meantime headed for Dendermonde to reorganize. At that moment, Gailly didn't know where his commander Hullebroek and the rest of the squadron were. The bridge at Dendermonde was blown up right after the last units of the Guides regiment had crossed it. Still unaware of the disposition of the rest of the squadron, Gailly took his platoon to the Lancers' headquarters at Destelbergen. They arrived at 6 PM and were ordered to help out the 2nd Cavalry Division at Stereken near St. Niklaas. Hullebroek in the meantime attached Onderluitenant Schreber's tanks to the 1st Chasseurs Ardennais in order to defend the River Dander. On the 19th of May, members of the 2nd Cavalry Division and the tanks under Gailly were sent to Zwijndrecht to perform a counterattack. The primitive tanks didn't have any radio, so some cyclists helped the tanks to communicate with each other. The 3-tank-strong platoon headed to Kruibeke until the A33 of Dumoulin stalled due to a lack of fuel. The 2 remaining tanks reached the Burgtstraat at 6 PM when they came into contact with the German spearhead. Gailly was leading until his tank was hit by a 37mm round. The platoon commander managed to escape with his driver, but his gunner was killed in the tank. Both men retreated and managed to reach friendly lines. Later in the evening, the 2nd Cavalry Division retreated back to the Moervaart, where they defended the Gent-Terneuzen Canal. The A33 was back in action after being refueled and together with the A32 went back to Belgian lines. The German army reached the eastern side of the Ghent bridgehead on the 20th of May. Schreber and his platoon were quickly sent towards Quatrecht to stem the German advance. In the morning of the 21st, Schreber and his entire crew were killed inside the 814 after receiving a direct hit. The 803 of Verboven also received several hits, killing the commander and his gunner Delens. The next day, the remnants of the unit were sent back behind the River Lys at Zwevenzele, where the unit got some rest. After the few days' rest, the unit was sent to Moorslede, where they were amalgamated with the other tanks of the Belgian army. The Germans had by then reached the channel, encircling the Belgian army, the BEF and a part of the French army. In the morning of the 25th, the tanks performed patrol duties at Sint-Aloys-Winkel. The next day, the unit was ordered to drive under the Belgian flag after being fired upon by a friendly 47mm cannon. That night, the unit was reinforced with some Carden-Lloyd T-13B2s, and they received orders to look out for German infiltrations. The 832 and several T-13s were sent towards Moorslede and Tuimelaars. The 833 and some T-13s in the meantime were sent towards Koekuithoek, and the 3rd and last ACG-1 and some T-13s were on their turn sent to Vierkavenhoek, where they acted as a tank reserve. On the day that Belgium surrendered, May 28, only 2 ACG-1s remained. They were sent back towards Roeselare, where the unit received the message of surrender and ceased to fight. And so ended the story of the Belgian ACG-1 tanks of May 1940. They were plagued with malfunction, and given their small number, they never managed to pose any threat to the German tank crews. This was the Ace Destroyer. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Cheers!